I think this post is a great opportunity to think about the difference between overthinking and actually planning for things. And so for a long time, I thought overthinking meant I was being responsible, replaying conversations, imagining every possible outcome, mentally preparing for things that hadn't even happened. So, like this person is noting, it felt like I was staying ahead. It does give you that sense of feeling like you are doing something about the future, right? It does feel like you're preparing. So, for example, I am going to take a French test in June. So, on one hand, the best way to prepare for the test is study. So when I study, it is kind of like preparing for the test. But there's a big difference between just studying for the test and, I know what's going to be covered in the French exam. French. So I just memorize the words every day to the extent that I can and try to solve the practice problems, work on some essays, work on some oral exams with, French speaking friends. Those are some things I can do, right? But now, the nuance here is that's different from thinking about the future. So, how can we tell the line between overthinking and just actually doing something? If it doesn't lead, if your thoughts don't lead to a concrete action, then it may be in the realm of overthinking. So, if I am sensing that, you know what, I think vocabulary wise I'm good, but maybe I feel like my speaking isn't, fluid enough. So in that case, it needs to be followed up by actual action. So booking more, conversation time or listening to a podcast and then, speaking that out loud so the French settles in my tongue. Those are the things that actually need to be followed through with. But I notice myself, you know what? I keep noticing that I'm worrying about it. I'm worrying about the speaking section, but I find that in the past week, I spent 0 minutes working on my speech. So in that case, you're kind of realizing that maybe this is a realm of overthinking. And so uh, trying to see if your plans actually lead to action or not. That's a really good way of assessing whether you're overthinking or actually planning. Now, but there's something more important that I think is worth mentioning in this. So, it's really exhausting. Why is it exhausting? Because I want you to pay particularly more attention to here. Imagine every possible outcome and mentally preparing for things that hadn't happened. Why do we do this? What's the underlying assumption that is governing this pattern of thinking? Like what assumption do we need to operate in order to be constantly imagining every possible outcomes and mentally preparing for things? Well, it's when this sounds really obvious, but it's when we think that being unprepared in the future is bad. When we generally understand that whatever day is ahead of me, I can take care of it, we don't really worry about it. So, for example, we always worry about the day of the exam, but we never really worry about the day after the exam. And this isn't just speaking about my French exam. We always worry about the finals, but we don't really worry about the day after the finals. Why is that? Because regardless of what happens in the day after the finals, you have a general sense that you can take care of whatever comes up. But when it comes to this test, you feel like this big event, you are so underprepared and you are so powerless against it. And that is the power dynamic that actually triggers the overthinking. So when you can see that all the days are just kind of the same days, and it's the overthinking is just a way of your mind dealing with the powerlessness that it feels against this really big thing that's coming up. You can turn this equation around by realizing that the best way to prepare for something is to actually do something rather than think about something. And moreover, regardless of what happens as the outcome, suppose I fail the French exam, guess what? I can take it again. And when I take it again the next time, hopefully and probably I'll have a better experience because I took the test so I got the nerves out of the way and such, right? So it may take a few times. So if you give up this idea that you have to make everything work in the immediate first try, then suddenly things become a lot more relaxing. But as a society, we have a tendency to go on and on and on and on. Like we make it as soon as, as big and fast as possible, right? So that may be the hard part. But anyways, this is the pattern that feeds into overthinking.